Hey everybody, it's Grandmaster Feingold here with another Tuesday night lecture here at the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of Atlanta. And this is a sponsored lecture from a secret donor, kind of person who's sponsoring the lecture. Thank you, secret person. And then I wasn't supposed to say the person's name, but I think their name is anonymous. Okay, and Oliver's here. Now we can actually start. Tonight's lecture is on the Soviet, Georgian, Israeli, American Grandmaster Roman Dzindzichashvili. And I knew him before not only you were born, but I knew him before I was born, somehow. And Dzindzichashvili was born in Georgia, the one that used to be the Soviet Georgia, not the Soviet Georgia that I live in now, for the next couple of months anyway. And then he emigrated to Israel in the 70s, and then from Israel to the U.S. He played in 1 million U.S. championships. He played in the Olympiad team, probably every board at the same time. And he's a character. He's one of the most interesting guys in chess who is a grandmaster, maybe even for anybody. And I have many, many stories about Dzingi, but since Oliver showed up, I can't tell any of them. But if Oliver wasn't here, we could have some, interesting stories about Dzingi. Dzingi is known to have insomnia, and he would be at chess tournaments playing chess, poker, and backgammon all night, and then go to his game. And at one of the tournaments I was at, about 30, these stories are all 30 years old for the most part. Some guy said, "Man, I couldn't sleep last night." And one of Dzingi's friends said, "Dzingi hasn't slept in 10 years. So he refuted that guy's complaint. And Dzingi was a fantastic chess player, and he was what I would call a deep thinker, which is unusual for a lot of grandmasters. He wasn't really known for playing for tricks. He was known for playing deep strategical chess and have great understanding of the positions. As a consequence, he was a very good player for about 40 years. Also, he's still alive. He's 76 years old. And if he has an account on chess.com, it's JRLOK. And I think that used to be his account when he played on ICC 30 years ago. And because he's 76, his blitz rating is only 2250. But he's a very famous blitz player, maybe even more so than a slow player. Now in slow chess, he's beaten several people who have been the world champion or played for the world championship, including Mikhail Tal. He's been the U.S. champion, I believe, twice. And he was the Soviet junior champion, back in the 60s. Maybe it was the 50s. Early 60s, I think. And there's a very famous game. And again, I know a lot about Dzingi because I know him. And I've read a lot about him that actually you guys would have trouble finding this information. There's a very famous story, if you were a strong chess player in the 70s, which I wasn't, but in Lone Pine, which was a tournament in California, which had a huge prize fund and only allowed very strong players to play, but they had grandmasters from all over the world. In the last round, Dzindzichashvili was playing Lev Albert. Lev Albert had just come to the U.S. from the Soviet Union, and they were playing on board one for first place. And Dzingi offered a draw, and Albert declined, and Albert was winning. And sometime near the time control, on move 39 or 40, Albert made a 12 question mark move, which lost the game. And Dzingi won clear first, and he won $15,000. And it was something like around between 1977 and 1980. It was somewhere in there. $15,000 then is $37 trillion now. I mean, chess tournaments that are open tournaments don't have prizes anywhere near those kind of dollars. But, Albert wanted to win and Dzingi won. Dzingi won a lot of tournaments, and I could do a whole lecture about what a character he was and not show any of his games, but I'll just do that a little bit. He also played backgammon for large sums of money, and one time he won so much money, he was in Europe, I think, he bought a car in cash and had the car shipped over to the US, which was very expensive. But he was probably, in chess terms, maybe 2,300 at backgammon. So he was a very good backgammon player, not as good as at chess. And he would play other games too, but I mean, obviously chess was his main game. And he has a very unusual sense of humor, very dry. And he has a really good grasp of the English language, considering that's not his first language. He would tell very dry jokes and very interesting. He was very insulting, which I liked. He insulted me on many occasions, but if you were a low-rated chess player and you tried to prove your acumen to him, he was brutal. And if you were his student, you wouldn't be his student for long, because he would just berate you until you gave up, because he didn't like moves that he didn't consider the best. I'll tell you two funny stories, then we'll look at some of his chess games. When I was about 14, 15, 16 years old, and I was about 2,300 USCF, at the New York Open, Dzingi was playing blitz chess for money, and he was done with somebody, and I wanted to play him. And he said it's $5 a game to play. And I said, and that was a lot of money for me then. When I was 15, I played for $1 a game, not for $5. And I said, do we have to play for $5 a game? And he said, no, we can play for more. Okay, so I played him for $5 a game, and I had $15 on me. That was all my money. And at some point, I was down 3 games, and I said, well, I can't play anymore. I don't have any more money. So that was the end of that. So many Dzingi stories, some of them involving illegal money issues with him. He liked to borrow money, but he didn't like to pay it back. But these things happen. Also, for somebody who was probably top 10 in the world at one point, he probably has been homeless for more than once in his life. Even it was suggested on the internet he lived at Washington Square Park. I mean, he would play blitz chess for money with anybody and give them crazy odds. And he would give international masters 5 minutes to 1 and still beat them every game. I mean, Dzingi was a great blitz player. So, all right, enough Dzingi stories. I have many more, but let's look at some of his games. Now, I have about 3 games that he played. This is the longest one. I have a couple of short wins. Then I have some positions that I want to show you from his games. This is against Bent Larsen, and this is probably around Dzingi's peak, 1980. He was 36 years old, and Larsen, his peak was probably about 1970 or even earlier. So Larsen was a little bit past his prime, and Dzingi was white. Now, Dzindzichashvili played every opening with both sides and had really good understanding. You can't just say, oh, Roman always played this opening. It's not true. Roman played every opening. So this game was a Bogo Indian. That's what this is called. And Roman played knight c3 really early, which is slightly unusual, but it's okay. And the game was actually pretty boring until it wasn't. And when I do live game commentary and Grandmaster events, which I've done a lot in St. Louis and I do a little bit here, I've noticed when the games are really sharp and complicated and tactical, a lot of times the players are in their preparation and the game fizzles out to a draw. They have it all figured out. And when the game is really boring and they're trading and the computer says it's equal, then the game gets crazier later, which is the case here. So the game starts out pretty boring, I would say, and there's trading and nobody has the advantage. And Dzingi decides to advance on the queen side where he has more space. He's got all these pawns here, on the 4th rank. So he has more space. But there's a lot of trading, so, it's not easy to win when there's a lot of trading. Okay, and they keep trading, more trading, everybody's trading. And position seems like it's about equal, but white's getting an advantage on the queen side, and black looks like he's possibly going to attack, but he never really does. So And Bent Larsen obviously was one of the top 10 players in the world in the 60s and 70s. Many famous games. Dzingi took with the d-pawn. Okay, now the game gets very interesting and tactical. What's funny is Dzingi's best wins are when he strategically outplays his opponent's in trouble, and then Dzingi beats them tactically. That's something I would like to do, but I haven't done it yet. But I'd like to do that, where I outplay my opponent, they're suffering, and then all of a sudden, bam, a tactic beats them. And that happens in like a lot of the Dzingi games, where you sort of like his position, it looks good for Roman, and then all of a sudden he wins. Okay, so he played c6, bishop a6, and now after b5, you're like, what's black doing? What's going on? And so Larsen plays crazy tactic, takes, and rook a5, because the bishop is pinned. And Dzingi defends, and they trade everything, and they get to 2 rooks versus a queen. And I must say, the white rook on b5 looks pretty good. The black queen is pretty passive. And most importantly, this pawn has a big potential to queen, the pawn on c6. It's pretty far advanced. Okay, knight c3, forking the rooks. You have to check. Move the rook. Okay. And this game got totally insane. Both sides have their kings being attacked, and white has to watch his back rank, although the rooks are defending the back rank, so the black queen can't, ever play queen a1 or anything. Okay. And he plays h4, which gives him luft. And black has a big attack against the white king. White has an attack against the black king. And white might queen his c-pawn. So it's a very interesting, I don't know what's going on. Now the thing is, for Larsen, this is a putting all your eggs in one basket kind of game. And as a vegan, I'm against that. Right, Oliver? All right. So Oliver's like, wait, yeah. I can't hear Oliver, but yeah, good job. Even though he unmuted himself. Yeah. He's too quiet. Okay, now the reason it's all your eggs in one basket is black has to mate white. If black doesn't mate white, there's Oliver, I can. If black doesn't mate white, white's going to make a queen. So, Okay, so Dzingi doesn't see a mate, so the game gets really exciting. See? Nigel Short thought he invented this, but he forgot about Dzingi's game. See, king e5, run away from the black queen. Now here you can't move your king because you lose your rook. Okay, so material's about equal, and Dzingi has a very easy plan. There's a good plan, right? Gotta like that plan. Knight d2, and the idea is if you take the knight, queen takes e3 check is annoying. So Dzingi just plays here, and he says, you can take all my pieces, I don't really care because I'm going to queen. And then I'll be winning. If I was black, I would definitely take the knight with check, and then I guess he would go here. Oh, you can't take the rook. That's unfortunate. I wanted to take this rook, but I guess you can't do that. Aw. All right, so he played knight c4, e5 check, and Dzingi's like, yeah, I don't really care about any of my pieces. I just want to queen my pawn and get my king safe. King c5 is a really funny move because white can take this, white can take this, and he's just like, yeah, I'm trying to queen over here. I'm trying to make a queen. And he does, hooray. Okay, now, if it was black's move, maybe black has some checks, but knight's hanging, okay, but it's white's move. So this is a really nice finish. Knight g5 check, wow. That's a beautiful move. So the idea is, if you take it, I can go check. There could be better, but this is just easy. Check. The king has to go to the f file, and then rook f8 check wins the queen. So that's the first point. And instead, Larsen plays king g6, queen check, the king has to go to f6 or f5, and then checkmate. And that's a typical kind of Dzindzichashvili win. It's just like a wild and crazy game. And that's how you expect Bent Larsen to win. And even though Dzindzichashvili is not very well known to young players, especially ones who don't live in the US, but even young players who do, the older players, we all know who he is because he was beating world-class players for 4 decades. So we know who he is. He was winning US championships. But of course, as he got older, unlike a lot of players today, like Yasser Seirawan, maybe you'll see him streaming, maybe he's teaching a lesson, maybe he's playing in some tournament. I mean, Dzindzichashvili was like playing in the park, playing blitz chess, you know. And recently, in the 2000s and 2010s, he has video series on the internet. You can watch them on chess.com. You could buy his DVDs called The Roman Labs. Okay, and then it's like Rome, like when Karen and I went to Rome, except it's a different kind of Roman, that's all. So that's probably why Pietro signed up for the class. He was like, oh, Roman, okay, that must be, you know, but it's the wrong Roman. So, yeah, he was so disappointed that it wasn't somebody from Rome that he's already left. Man, terrible. Okay, so that was that. Now we're going to look at some positions, I think. Oh, he's back. He's probably asleep, though. Okay. Save. No, we're not going to save. Okay. Okay, this is one of his most famous games. And every 2 years, except now that there's COVID, not as often. Every 2 years, there's a tournament called the Chess Olympiad where all the countries go and they try to win medal for their country. In 1984, it was in Greece, in Thessaloniki, and Dzindzichashvili was playing for the American team. And he was beating everybody. I mean, the US had a really good year that year. And this is one of his most famous wins against Belyavsky. Belyavsky was a candidate for the World Championship. Okay, and this game was adjourned, which would confuse Oliver, because Oliver's like, what does that mean?
No, I know what that means.
Right, it just means that they stop the game and they play the next day because the game is going for 6, 7, 8 hours.
Yeah.
This game went at least 8 hours, at least. Okay, this game might have been adjourned twice. Anyway, Dzingi was better the whole game, but Belyavsky was trying to get a fortress where nobody could win. He blocked everything up. Okay, so rook h7. Now the bishop is defending the pawn. This pawn's defending this pawn. The rook is defending the 7th rank. And Belyavsky's like, it's a draw, you can't win. Now, the reason it's a win is very interesting. It takes deep understanding, but since I saw the game when it was played, and I've looked at the game more than once, and I know the winning idea, I can explain it to you. The winning idea is to force black into a zugzwang position where he can't move. Now, the black bishop can't move because you'd lose your f-pawn. If you play like bishop here or bishop here, you're losing your f-pawn. If you play bishop here, you're getting checkmated. Bishop here hangs the bishop. The king can't move to a8 because I'll take your bishop. Okay, so for black, it looks like it's a pretty easy draw because this whole rank is open. But actually, if the white king is on g6, you can't go to these squares. If the black queen is on c5, can't go to these squares. The pawn's on b6, you can't go to these squares. Well, that means you're going to go here and here. When you go here, d7, you might lose your f-pawn, or you might not, because discovered check might win the queen. So that's the key to winning the endgame, is to put him into zugzwang and then take the f-pawn at the appropriate moment, which somehow he gets to do. So he plays king g6, attacking the rook. The rook goes to d7. He says, if you want to take my g-pawn, be my guest. If you take with the king, double discovered check. If you take with the queen, I can check you either place and win your queen. So Dzingi just makes a move and he triangulates with his king. And he says, ha-ha, now it's your move. And the guy said, no talking. Okay? So he played king b7. He's like, I can go there. Okay? And now the shocking triangulation again, very funny. And now black has to move again. Well, where can black move? King back to b8. And now, with the king on b8, and a shocking revelation to everybody on the Zoom call, we can take this pawn. The reason we could take this pawn is the black king is on b8. If the black king was on b7, black would have an extra tempo. The king would be next to the b6 pawn, so the king could take the pawn pretty quickly after winning the white queen. And he could win the white queen by playing rook d6 check. What's the only move that white can make here that wins the game? Who can find it? Oh wait, I'm not in the class. Notice white's in check and his queen's hanging. Anybody?
Queen g5? King g5?
Well, king g5, I'll take your queen, then probably black's winning. It's very important that the white king is on h6. That allows this
Queen
move.
g6?
Queen g6, right. Now, if this was the same position, which he could have had earlier, and black's king was on b7, black would take the queen, and black would take the pawn on b6. But after taking the queen, you can't take the pawn on b6, because your king's on b8. So Dzingi gained a tempo, and because of that, he's winning the game. So he played bishop here, pins the pawn, runs over here. And now what's the easiest win for white? It might be the only winning move, I'm not sure. It's definitely the easiest. I'm not sure if it's the only win.
e7?
No such move is legal. I mean, did you say e7 or you say b7? What? f7? Maybe you said b7, I misheard you. That's your only hope.
I did say b7. Or at least
Oh, okay, that's why. I thought you said e7. I'm used to illegal moves. b7, I take it. I don't know. Probably that's a draw. Even though this game was played in 1984, Dzingi knew to put it in H. Always put it in H. How can you guys who go to my stream and know all my emotes don't know about putting it in H?
King h6?
King h6, right. You want to play king g7, and then as Val Kilmer would say, anybody? Anyone? No? You got two pawns, one for each of you. Yeah, once you play king g7, you're going to get a queen. The bishop can't stop both pawns. So here Belyavsky resigned. Now I want to go back to this position. Okay, let's pretend white took this pawn with the king on b7 instead of b8, and the same thing happened. Okay, so here, I haven't analyzed this, so I could be wrong, but I'm guessing I'm not wrong. Yeah. Then this is a draw. And this is a draw. So, by the way, even if that was winning for white, which it's not, I don't think, but if it was, you still shouldn't do it. You should wait for the black king to go to b8, which is he triangulated again, the king, and then he took the pawn, because that's better. You might as well have the black king away from the b pawn rather than attacking it. And those are the kind of games that Dzindzichashvili won, even against the world's best players. Really deep strategical thinking and figuring out how to win by one tempo. And a lot of people said that was the best game of the Olympiad, but since the game was about 90 moves, I decided not to use the whole stream showing you. But basically, Belyavsky had a bad position the whole game, and he was defending, and then he capitulated. Okay, back to whatever it is I was doing. Okay, this is against Lubomir Luboyevich, an 85. Another endgame. Obviously, black has a worse king. Black has a worse pawn structure. Black's bishop on d6 doesn't look very good. And black's a6 pawn looks pretty weak. So white has a lot of advantages. Okay, now, the gawking rabble on the internet, who are usually my good friends, they didn't like when this game ended because they were confused. So if you guys are confused, I'll unconfuse you. Or I'll confuse you more, I don't know. Okay, knight c6, knight b4, Dzingi wants to take the a pawn. And the thing is, if you take with either piece, which all of you would do, because all of you always trade when you legally can, then he takes this, he'll play b5 and get a pass pawn and win. And Lubo said, I'm not gonna give you a pass pawn. He just played knight b8 and defended his pawn. And he's like, this is a draw, you can't break through. And the arbiter said, no talking. You can't talk during the game. Okay. None of that happened, but it sounds good. Okay, now, imagine you're white in this position. You can't break through. The white king can't get in there. There's no legal way to get in here. You can't do it. If your king got to c5, which he did, you still can't come in. You still can't get in. You can't get in there. So Lubo played knight b8, and he's like, what's the problem? I don't see any problem. Okay, so knight c5, attacking the a pawn. Lubo takes it. And now white can't get in. White's got no way to get in. So he plays king g6, and he's like, whatever, you can't get in. It's going to be a draw. Okay, how did Dzingi break through on the queen's side?
Knight takes a6.
Knight takes a6 is correct.
I was wondering if he could go back so black could play king e7 if he might be able to draw.
The problem with king e7 is I think I can play knight c6 check, and you have to take it.
Oh.
And if the king is on g6 and you play knight c6, I'll play knight d7 check and kick your king out. However, you could play king e8 instead of king e7 so that knight c6 is in check. The problem is, I think from Lubo's point of view, he said, well, white can't get in here, but this pawn and this pawn, the knight can attack this pawn, the knight can attack this pawn, so I'll just keep my king here, I'll defend both my pawns, my knight and pawn keep the king out, that's a draw. So the problem is, if Lubo moves his king over here to stop knight a6, I don't know about those pawns could be weak. And probably he overlooked or underestimated knight a6. But I think king e8 is a better defense. Yeah. And then after here, he confused the audience, which is you. That's amazing that in 1985, Luboyevich could confuse you guys later because he resigned. Okay, and people on the internet, they weren't sure this was a win. They said, let's analyze this. Okay, takes, here, 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 takes. King f7, king b7, c5, c4. And they were like, how does white win? What do you mean? The reason they weren't sure white was going to win is because black has like this extra move here with h5, and white doesn't have any extra moves. So they're like, what's the problem? Okay, so they're analyzing this and thinking maybe it was a draw, because you can see, I go here. Okay, and now white's winning. What's the winning move? I think there's only one winning move. I think so.
King d6.
King d6 should win, because I'm just going to take those pawns. But I think other moves don't win. I think after here, this is a draw. You have to take the pawn at stalemate. If you play king b6, then I go here, h3. So the people on the internet thought maybe it was a draw when the guy resigned, but it wasn't. It's still winning. Yeah. Okay, and so Luboyevich definitely top 10 in the world. Dzingi beat a lot of top 10 in the worlds. And he didn't do it because he was lucky. He obviously outplayed them. I mean, you can see in this position, it doesn't look like black is the better player. It looks like black is really struggling, and he capitulated. Yeah. So that was in Tilburg, Interpolis. Tilburg is the city. It's in the Netherlands. Interpolis is an insurance company that was the main sponsor of the tournament, and they played in the building. So I was at Interpolis. I was there because I used to live in Belgium, and I decided a couple of times to go watch the tournament, and I would get into this insurance building, and you go to some floor, and that's where the chess was. And the other floors, people were doing insurance work. So, yeah, they were the big sponsor. They had a big tournament there every year with the best players in the world. So, obviously, Dzindzi's one of the best players in the world. He's playing in the tournament. Okay, then I do this again. Got to do something. Okay, this was one of his more exciting games against Tukmakov. And actually, black castled this game, and Dzingi was crushing him on the H-file, so Tukmakov ran away. Okay, and I've played Tukmakov myself. I've beaten him, lost to him, and drawn against him. Although mainly lost. And this was in the Soviet Championship before you were born. They'll teach you to be born. Okay, so Tukmakov played queen b5, attacking the e-pawn. Then there was a firework, tactics, fire on board, total craziness. Okay, now queen h8 isn't mate because of knight f8. And obviously, you don't want black to play queen takes pawn on e5. So Dzingi played a very exciting move because he knew I was going to lecture about him, and he wanted me to show you guys exciting moves. Rook d5, confusing about half the audience. About half of you are confused, right? Well, he saved his pawn. He attacked the queen. And obviously, if you take, I can check you on d6 or f6. I don't know which one is better. And then queen takes queen. Knight f6 seems more obvious, but maybe knight d6 is better. Okay, so Tukmakov played queen e2. a3, excellent move. You got to get that king luft. If white's queen starts running around, but white's going to have some back rank issues. So I really like the move a3. Rook c4, attacking the knight, and this is a blunder. Too aggressive. It doesn't work, although I think black was in trouble anyway. Knight c5. If you play knight takes knight, now queen h8 is mate because the knight can't go to f8. So the knight can't take because checkmate. Okay? Rook f4, threatening, rook f1 check. What's your question?
What about rook takes?
Then if you play rook takes c5, good question. Then I would check you. You would play the only legal move, right?
Yeah.
And then I take your rook.
Oh.
Exactly. Man, that guy was lucky, wasn't he? Okay. So he played rook f4, threatening rook f1 check. Check. Knight f8. And now what did Dzingi do? If you watch my streams, if you watch my streams, you should know.
Rook d8 check.
Right. Now analyze all the way to the end.
Okay.
Except, you guys probably can't do that. You can do it, you just don't want to. You're like, that's hard, leave me alone. It's funny, in Dzingi's games, there's a lot of kings marching up the board for both sides. Crazy. So after rook d8, black has one legal move. After queen takes knight check, black has one legal move. After queen takes e7 check, black has 4 legal moves, although 2 of them just hang mate.
Yeah.
So the other 2 are walking the king up the board. And the reason white's winning is because this queen's not protected. Now, I'd like to point out, in my opinion, you don't have to agree, for somebody of Tukmakov's level, rook f4 is a very bad blunder. So we're going to say he was in time trouble, because you got to say something. If he wasn't in time trouble, that's a very bad blunder. Although it could be, it didn't matter. He was losing anyway. But for somebody as good as Tukmakov, who was definitely top 50 in the world, you can't just lose to like check, 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 check. You got to lose, for some other reason, not because the guy checks you 5 times in a row. Because he has one legal move, he has one legal move, he has one legal move. This is really easy for strong grandmasters. When their opponents have one legal move, we're good at analyzing that. And obviously, if the king goes backwards, that just gets checkmated. King c8 and king b8, that's hopeless. You get mated on b7, you get mated on d7, probably you get mated on other squares too. So you got to move your king up. It actually doesn't matter where your king goes up. White plays the same move. Can you guys figure it out by now how to win that queen?
The
queen's not protected. So we have some tricks to win the queen. Oliver should get it because tricks are for kids. No. Pietro's like, we don't have that commercial in Italy. What are you talking about? Also, that commercial's 30 years old. But still, how do we win that queen? You have to see it 4 moves ago. Man, now I know what Simon and Garfunkel meant by the sounds of silence. Man, it's hurting my ears.
King takes
What's that?
B7, king takes
Queen takes b7. You have to take the knight.
And
He resigned here, but okay. Yeah?
takes a7 and push him to the light square diagonal.
Yeah, but I can go here after queen takes a7 or here because your queen's not there anymore. You're right, but not queen takes a7. It's a move that you wouldn't think of because it looks insane. You're like, whoa, I'm not doing that. But it does win the queen, so it's less insane because it wins the queen.
B4.
B4 is correct, yeah. That white's king is pretty open, but black's going to lose his queen now. What's funny is, in this position, the queen is stopping rook f1 mate. Otherwise, black would be winning. But yeah. So after b4 check, you have to play king c4, then you lose your queen. And obviously, when Dzingi in this position, when he played queen h8 check, you already saw that. Check, 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 check. And after here, Luboyevich resigned because obviously Dzingi's going to play b4 and queen a6 check. Yeah. That's funny how there's so many king marches in his games and how complicated they are. But strategically, Dzingi always has a good position. His king was safer when they started and still safer. Okay, another great attacking game. Okay, now this game I was not familiar with, and I know Eric Lobrun also. Eric Lobrun, we could do a lecture on him. He was born in a U.S. Base in Germany, and when he was a kid, he grew up in Florida. He got to about 1600 and moved back to Germany and became a grandmaster. And he has an American and a U.S. passport, and he speaks fluently German and English. I can't say he speaks one better than the other. I think it's perfect, both of them. And this is a very strange story I'm going to tell you. It sounds made up, but it's all over the internet, so it's not made up. There was a woman who was the president of the Estonian Chess Federation about 25 years ago, and she tried to get the Olympiad to Estonia. They bid for it, the Chess Olympiad, but they lost, so they didn't have the Olympiad there. And she was dating Eric Lobrun for a while, which makes sense. She's the head of the Estonian Chess Federation. He's a grandmaster. What's funny is she's actually a world-famous fashion model, which doesn't make any sense. Her name is Carmen Kaz, and she's, if you go to Wikipedia, there's pages and pages about her, but she's also played chess with Lobrun and Anand and Kramnik, so there you go. Anyway, they dated a long time ago until they didn't. All right, now Lobrun was a very strong player, and he won the New York Open maybe like in the early 80s. Very strong, and basically doesn't play chess anymore. And this was probably around the height of their powers, and this was a totally insane game. This is, I mean, as you're a spectator, this is what you want. If you're a player, it's too scary. Okay, you can't play chess like this. It's too complicated. Okay, so Dzingi played rook a d8. I'd like to point out the game looks pretty boring until now. Rook takes h7, confusing the audience. That turned Oliver upside down. That's how crazy that was. You guys see Oliver now? He's not even, I mean, he's upside down. That's how crazy that move is.
I thought of rook take h7, but...
Yeah. Now we're going to play rook takes g7, so you got to take that. Bishop takes f7. The king is trapped. If it's white's move, white's going to play rook h1. So now you guys are like, excuse me, I thought this was a Dzindzichashvili lecture. This looks like it's a Lobrun lecture. Lobrun sacrificing his rook and crushing Dzindzichashvili. That's what you thought. Rook e6. He says, if you play rook h1, I'll block with my rook. I'm not worried at all. He's probably worried a little bit. Bishop takes rook, knight takes. Now black is up a piece, and he's staving off the attack. Queen b3, threatening the knight, threatening b7, which also threatens everything. Knight f4 check. So white was checkmating black, and black is like, how about I checkmate you? And the arbiter said, no talking. Confusing the audience. Lobrun played king f3. If he takes the knight, which he could have done, then I take on g4 with check. I don't think you can play knight g3 because then I would just take this, right? And looks like you're going to lose your knight. So I don't want to put my king on the h file because I'm afraid black will put his rook on the h file and then I'll get checkmated. I'm afraid to do that. So I guess king f1 is playable, maybe. And I sort of like black here because I don't like where white's king is. Black could play something like rook d2 maybe. I don't like that king. I'm threatening queen e2 with mate. I don't like his position. Okay, so Lobrun, he played king f3, defending his g-pawn. Rook d3 check. Now you guys can all guess the correct move, right?
Yeah.
Knight e3, the only legal move. Queen h6. An amazing move, stopping rook h1. So black is still up a piece. He takes his piece back. Rook d2, that's just an amazing move. I don't know how he found that. What's the threat? If it was black's turn to move, what would he do? This is one of the easy ones. I thought it was easy.
Or why couldn't you do that like before?
Do what before?
Queen takes f4 check.
That's not the threat. I'll give you a hint. It's too hard for you guys. It's mate in 1. Black has mate in 1 here.
Oh, queen h3.
Queen h3 is mate. Okay, now queen f4 also wins because after king g2, we can take the pawn on f2 and then mate him. With the rook here, we can't take the pawn on f2. If you take on f4 now, I can just play king e2. So that's an amazing move. And in my opinion, if I ever see Lobrun, I'll ask him. He'll probably get mad because he lost. I don't think he saw rook d2. Who's going to see rook d2? We got queen takes f4 check. We got queen h3 check. We got e takes f4. Who's going to see rook d2? What an amazing move. It stops white from playing king e2, and it threatens checkmate in 1 and checkmate in, I guess, 3. Okay, king g2, stopping all of black's threats. Takes on f4, attacking the knight. Rook h1, winning the queen. All right, now, if you're a very emotional person, I'm not saying you are, but if you are, now you're going to cry. This is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
Rook takes f2 check.
Rook takes f2.
And then you take the rook.
No. You wouldn't cry for that. You're going to cry for this. There's no crying after queen takes rook. After queen takes rook, material's equal. Anybody?
F takes e3.
F takes e3 check. White plays the obvious. No, not obvious.
King G1.
G2.
King G2, King G1, doesn't matter. King G2. And now, what did black do? I mean, he had to see this like 5 moves ago. Unbelievable. Not legal.
E2.
E2 is legal, but again, right idea, wrong move order. Probably E2 wins, probably. Actually, maybe E2 doesn't win. I've changed my mind. E2 does not win. Then I play rook takes queen check and your king is exposed.
Queen takes rook check.
Queen takes rook check, and then E2. Amazing. Wow. And the truth hurts. See, and what you guys don't realize, and some of you won't believe, you have to see that a long time ago. You don't just get lucky. Okay, now, I won't name any names. And hopefully Karen's muted, because I think she's going to laugh now. There's a person in Georgia who was watching one of my games once, and I won, and they were like, do you just see all the tactics and complications, or is it just luck? Yeah, I'm just lucky every game. That's what I said. Every game's luck. Like, I won a game that was super complicated in Georgia a few years ago, and I was showing like variation 1, variation 2, variation 3, and people watching are just like, what's happening? We don't calculate, we just make legal moves. Okay? And when super grandmasters play like this, if some game ends like this, that's because black figured it out a long time ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have played like this. So the question is, when did he see it? Okay, now I'm guessing, after this is when he saw it. Maybe he saw it before, maybe. But I'm pretty sure he saw after takes. Obviously, rook h1 is a monster move. So, he sees rook h1. So he must have seen this when he played e takes f4. He must have seen this position. And the pawn can't be stopped, and black's up a piece for nothing. But that was an amazing game, because white's attacking black, black defends, and then instead of saying, well, I defended, he said, no, I'm going to attack, and he sacked all his pieces. What an amazing game. But yeah, I mean, to see all that so far ahead is crazy. That's crazy tactically good. Yeah, if that was Puzzle Rush, nobody's solving that. Yeah, that's just great. Rook takes, and e2. e2 at the end is just so beautiful. The white queen is helpless, the white king is helpless. Anyway, that guy was lucky every game, just like me. Okay, now I have a couple games, but they're short. Let's see, flip board. Okay, this was against Gregorian, and it was very noisy during the game because of all the chanting. Right, Karen? The guy's name is Karen. So there's 2 grandmasters I heard of whose name is Karen. Not the Karen I'm married to. Gregorian and Austrian. Austrian actually died very young. Okay, this is the other one. Okay, now this game was played in Rostov-on-Don. I've been to Rostov-on-Don, which doesn't make any sense, but I've been there. Okay, that city has millions of people and nobody's heard of it. It's very strange. Okay, now Dzindzi's black. Don't blink. If you blink, you're going to miss the whole game. Now, most of you are familiar with the famous game Gufeld versus Kavalik from the Student Olympiad when Kavalik played for the Czech Republic. Well, it was Czechoslovakia then. And that game is called the Kavavalanche game. Yeah, get out of here. Okay. this game had the same opening. It's an opening you almost never see, but it was still the same opening. So at some point, if you want to look up the game Gufeld-Kavalik, I think 1962, I could have the year wrong, where Kavalik sacrifices all of his pieces to get like 700 passed pawns. Very interesting game. But it was also this opening. And I think it was this. I think this is the game. Yeah. Okay, and I'm pretty sure this is also the game. I'm pretty sure. And I think Gufeld played knight e4. That's my recollection of the Kavavalanche game. He took this, and on the internet, people say that's the losing move. I don't know. Okay, all I know is black has a lot of pawns. Black has all of his pawns. And this is a threat, and this is a threat, and this is a threat. So, you know, probably good for black, although black is a piece down. Okay. So he played h4, putting it in h. Takes, king here. Takes. Now it's equal material. Now white plays a fork. Which one of you can find the fork? Anybody? Anyone?
I guess a 4, so knight f7.
Knight, well, no. Actually, knight f7 like almost works. But he played queen d5, threatening the rook and threatening mate.
And also threatening another fork.
Also threatening the b5 pawn, the e5 pawn, yeah. Okay, so knight h6, putting it in h, stopping mate. c6, trapping the queen. Knight e4. Castles. Bishop g5. Now, so far you guys are confused because this game is too complicated. That's fine. If you're a grandmaster, it's 1,000,000% you want black here because white's queen is trapped and white's king is ridiculous. So you don't really care about the material as much. Although if you count the material, white's up a rook.
And also the pawn on the 7th rank is worth more than a rook.
I agree. You're quoting me. Good job. Now, the reason I like this game so much is because of what happens now. Black made a move and white resigned. I really like this move. I like it more than I should. Let's see if you guys can find it. There's more than one winning move, but this move is super winning. It gets an S for super winning.
Knight g4 threatening knight e3 check.
The bishop on g5 defends e3. And if you play knight e3, I'll play king e2. No big deal. I mean, it's a little deal, but not like what happened. What happened will shock and awe you. Shock and awe.
Bishop a6.
That does win, but it doesn't win as much as what he did. It's the same idea, but Dzingi played it in a better way. Bishop a6 is like +7. His move is like +24. It's the same idea as your idea.
So then just b4?
That's right, b4. That's unbelievable. I like the way he's attacking on the king side, b4, and the game's over. So now, bishop a6 is going to be mate. And if it's not mate because you play king e2 or g3, then bishop a6 wins your queen. Bishop a6 check, queen takes queen. Amazing. Bishop a6 also wins, but it's for some reason it's less winning. I just don't know why. I looked at the analysis, but it's too hard. Also, b4 is much cooler. Threatening bishop a6. So bishop a6 is going to be mate, and if you play like king e2 or g3, so it's not mate, then when I check you, I take your queen. If you play c4, which is explosive, now I play bishop a6, threatening mate, and threatening your queen. Now that guy was a grandmaster, but he lost with white in like, 13 moves? Man, harsh. Chess is tough. Yeah, b4 resigns. So to me, that was amazing. Yeah. That was a great victory. All right, that's all I have to show you today, but I seriously recommend, this is serious now, go to the internet and look up Dzindzichashvili. Good luck spelling it. Now, this isn't a well-known fact, but it will be after I tell you. About 11% of Dzindzichashvili's wins in chess were time forfeits before move 1 because their opponent was writing his name down and their flag fell. That's not a well-known fact. Right, Oliver? Very not well-known. Okay. You got to look at Dzindzi's best games. He has so many good games. Dzindzichashvili was beating strong grandmasters for 40 years, so I can't show you the 200 beautiful games that he won. I just give you a sampling. But he beat basically everybody. You can name any grandmaster from 1950 to 2000, and Dzingi beat him. He beat him all over the world. He played in Israel, he played in the US, he played in the Soviet Union, he played in Hastings, and he played in Tilburg. He played all kinds of super strong tournaments, and he was one of the top players in the world, and eventually he started making videos because he got older. His health isn't great, always had insomnia. He was good at other games too. He's a very interesting character, very unusual person, but a great chess player. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of Atlanta's YouTube page. We'd like to thank our anonymous sponsor, first name Anon, last name Emus. Anonymous sponsor. Go sponsor. And please enjoy more of our videos that you'll be watching shortly on this YouTube page and mine. And you can watch Karen and me on Twitch also. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.